Hey guys, so it seems like the most interesting part of this whole New Jeans creator Min Hee-jin's war against HYBE has been all about Her Shaman. I know it has some real juicy nuggets to this story, but it really does shock me about how much of this case is now spilling over to the whole shaman, and how that we found out recently that she's been on the run, and she's been on the run for months. Nobody can find her. Nobody knows where she is. She left her place of residence and business. So we're going to serve you up some more of this shaman. Now, we really have to keep in mind that the big part of this whole debacle has been the breach of trust, the plotation, the betrayal, the trying to take HYBE. Now it seems like the entire company. Before we thought she was just after Adore, New Jeans, and then trying to start her own independent label by using the investment funds that she borrowed from HYBE and then to cash out with HYBE's money, which, a lot of you guys are right to point out, it's basically BTS generated money. And now it really does kind of irk me in a way that the information that we're getting now, in particular with the shaman, really was not new information. HYBE has been saying this for months. So the shaman, the details of the shaman, HYBE actually released on April 25th, the same day as the press conference, but essentially the public chose to disregard HYBE's claims and their evidence and to believe in the histrionics of Min Hee-jin's press conference. So I want to reiterate that if you have been piecing through the evidence from the beginning and not so much swayed, and you're wondering why now this information is becoming more popular in a sense, well, I think you're just gonna have to understand that as a part of the human condition, that, I look at the evidence and I think HYBE has so much more evidence that proves its case versus Min Hee-jin's misrepresentation of the fragments of something that she has woven into a tale that keeps changing. And however, yes, do you feel a little bit upset by your fellow compatriots, people in our human experience that decide to really believe the liar versus the one that has been quietly trying to defend itself and tell the truth? It is what it is. So, what we did find out, the latest information, was there was just an enterprising reporter from TV Daily. So it's sort of like it's kind of like a gossip rag-ish, like TMZ-ish type of place. And they went to visit the registered address of the shaman. Because now a lot of the information has come out from dispatch, right? The more of the details that actually HYBE has already presented, but more of the details, which meant that now that HYBE has a little bit more space to be heard, people are interested in the shaman. What's up with the shaman? Where is she? Can we find her? Can we ask her direct questions about this case to really get her perspective on the story? They went to her place that was registered. Now, we've been talking about this shaman named Chi-young-nim 0814, or just Ms. Lee. And we've been talking about how she has this place in Gangnam in Yeoksamdong, a temple. And I was just like, oh, where is this temple? That's a hard place to put a temple. I've never seen like some sort of temple where, they're dancing around and like a yard and stuff. That's a very busy district. So apparently, though, a lot of these shamans, they create a shrine, they create their place of business inside an apartment, what you guys would call maybe a condo apartment. In this case, it was villa. So a villa is not like, like a whole house that you have like in the south of France or something like that, but it is sort of built in that style, maybe 3 stories, 4 stories, 5 stories. If it's big, it could be big, but it's generally lower stories and it has fewer units, and so it's a little bit more low key. And so that's where her place of business was registered. The reporter went and knocked on the door, and there was all of the trappings of a shrine. But the person that answered the door said that she was not this shaman in question. Apparently, she's probably had a lot of people roll through. She said that she was just H, but it's a little bit weird because the name of the villa starts with an H, so I don't know, she's probably making stuff up. But she responded to questions with a wary look, apparently, and said that there was no relationship between herself and the shaman you're asking about. Oh, she left in January. So she said that, she got the place in January, or she started running it in January, which meant that Miss Jiyoung 0814 had fled or left. You never know. So we're going to go into like possible reasons why and how this whole shaman system works in Korea. And, one likelihood of where she might be, in the big house, or she might be in a submarine. And I'll explain what those lingos are in Korean in a little bit. But really, when we were looking at Min Hee-jin's claim about the shaman from the press conference, she said that it was just an acquaintance. Now we have evidence that in just 2021 alone, she paid this so-called acquaintance 70 million won, roughly $70,000. So if you have a close acquaintance, why do you hand them over $70,000? And now we have the evidence for what? It wasn't just like, lending this person money. This person who was your so-called acquaintance was charging for her services to do a ritualistic, shamanistic type of ceremony to get you what your heart desires. So you could put curses on people, you can ask for blessings and luck, you can try to direct where the future would go. That's a lot more than just an acquaintance. And then if we remember Min Hee-jin's response to the question about the shaman, because that news hit that morning. So yes, that was an attack by HYBE, but then everybody just really kind of criticized HYBE about that, even though they had the evidence for it. And then they were just like, how can you make all these weird assertions about Min Hee-jin? And now we know that from the evidence, it looks extremely credible. And she said that, no, I don't do fortune telling. I poured my worries out to this acquaintance of mine who happened to be a shaman as the new Jean's mom. So now she's trying to, redirect the public's attention to she was just venting to somebody else, in the spirit of a mom. Well, we know that she was venting about her stock options, venting about the business registration and taking things away from Source Music and betraying Bang Si-hyuk and not doing her work, and complaining about how if she did do her job, it would just benefit somebody else. Didn't sound very motherly to me. Oh yeah, and if you are an abusive mom, maybe kicking out a girl from your own family, how she consulted the shaman and they kicked out one of the New Jeans recruits, because there were 7 girls originally, then it turned into 5, and then one of them they said, oh, she looks like demon possessed or something. Oh, yeah, let's get rid of her. So she said that, it went back and forth. What's wrong with she said, I don't go to shamans, or I don't go to fortune telling. So I think she was trying to say that she doesn't go to fortune telling, which is the lighter version of going to this shaman. The shaman can do your fortune, and they'll do like chum. Chum means like they'll it's like the Korean version of astrology, using like more astrological charts, and it's kind of the very mild form of probably what the shaman would do. And then not all people who read your, fortune, most of them don't do all these like big witchcraft type things. But then she says, what's wrong with the kut? What's wrong with the witchcraft ceremony? If this shaman is an acquaintance, and if they do it, that's just what they do. And then she says, I don't even go to fortune telling. So you see how like the part where she did participate, the actual like the big ticket item of like putting spells on people, she's like, what's wrong with that? And then she says, I don't do fortune telling. So obviously she's probably like, that's child's play. I want the big enchilada, don't give me the free chips with salsa. And then when she just keeps yapping, then your attention just flows over to where she's trying to direct you. But now that we have some time on our side and letting the facts kind of settle down, it's very obvious that she's not being forthright, at least with her relationship with the shaman, how deep it was, as opposed to how light she presented it, and what she did with the shaman, as opposed to how she tried to misdirect our attention. Because then she suddenly said in the press conference, I go to a psychiatrist, I go through like Western medicine. And that's a very important tell, because with a lot of the words from Min Hee-jin, she's saying the opposite of what the truth is. And a lot of the times you see people forego, they don't get mental health treatment, they'll go to a shaman. A lot of the times when you're at this level of just beyond fortune telling with the shaman, and you're willing to do this kind of crazy stuff and pay crazy amounts of money, you're in a desperate mental state that you want to change, and you want to change it through your physical situation. You want things to get better. And so she's saying like, well, no, I had to go to a psychiatrist for like 10 years. And you know what? The HYBE people, they go to shamans. They go more than me. And it's just, now we know. Yeah, maybe you did go to a psychiatrist. We don't know. Nobody's releasing your medical records as opposed to what you've been accused of other people's medical records. And she might have done that, but then it's very clear that she did go to this shaman in particular, had messages up the wazoo. And speaking of which, so you're probably hearing about her backlash, saying like, oh, this is private information, how can you release it? Well, and you took it from my laptop. They're like, girl, we didn't even touch that old janky laptop that you say is the one that we want. No, we don't want that janky one. We didn't have to turn it on. All of this was in the cloud, and you still owe us a laptop. And so this information came in two parts. So how did this get released to the outside world? Well, HYBE, when it was doing its internal audit in February, March, April, had wrote it up in a report, and then they sent it to somebody. And then so that was how all of the evidence was organized. How did HYBE get the evidence in the first place? They say that they took it off of their cloud data, all the servers, because Min Hee-jin herself sent the evidence with her work email to Pana, or the outside person. And thank you, netizen sleuths of this channel. You guys have figured out that Pana is essentially an A&R music company that is the home of 250. 250 is one of the big composers of New Jeans music. The guy who started Pana, A&R representative, former SM. So knew Min Hee-jin closely. He also registered the trademark All Joy, which was essentially the name that Min Hee-jin was gonna make for her company instead of Adore. Remember, she was consulting with her shaman. Hey, should I call my company Adore or All Joy? And the trademark for All Joy, funny enough, the records show that it has been registered by Pana. So it looks like in 2021, since then, maybe even before, but in terms of action that we can see through the evidence, starting from 2021, this has been in motion. This has been in play. They're gearing up. And so it's kind of frustrating if you are actually the victim and you're seeing everybody like, oh my God, the shaman, or and like the shaman part, but then you're forgetting that, like, as if like somebody stole your ATM card, and people are saying like, oh my God, she consulted a shaman to steal your ATM card? Let's hear more about the shaman. But you're like, hello, this person stole my ATM card. And then people are like, well, did they actually go to the ATM? Well, we caught them before they were on their way. Oh my God, tell me about the shaman. So this is how I'm also saying that, like, why I do feel the frustration on HYBE's side, because I'm saying like, look, hello, but okay, we'll talk about the shaman. Okay, we'll talk about the sexual harassment. And if she weren't like that extreme, then would you care about it? And that's the kind of also part that I find kind of scary about the public opinion, or like how the groupthink mind goes. But back to the shaman, because we're talking about the shaman, right? So this was last week that TV Daily reported, but she's been in hiding apparently since January. So a lot of times people say that when you go away, like you're trying to hide, that you go underwater. 잠수타다. So some people say, oh, they're on a submarine, like they're under the water in the cut, just like hiding, laying low, or like, scuba diving. You're basically under the water where you can't be seen, and you're waiting for things to kind of die down, and then maybe you'll pop up again. Now, the other possibility is that she might be, I guess you could look it up through more of the public criminal record. She might be in jail. A lot of the times, these shamans, they're going in and out of jail because people are suing them or pressing criminal charges for fraud against them. And so there have been a few big documentaries lately about the fraudulent industry of this whole shaman thing. Are there real people touched by the gift? Yes. Is this an actual practice that has come down through history in Korea and other nations? Like, everybody has some sort of like trying to fortune tell with the divine and all this kind of stuff. Yes. And could she be legitimate? Yes. And talented. Well, obviously from her Kakao talks, that looks, it looks like she was a lot of the times on her game pretty well. But really, she is a liability, because when you really think about, like, they're even looking at the stylist over embezzlement charges. Think of all the juicy information that could come out of this shaman if the police summoned her for questioning. And given the nature of this business, if she is already in trouble with the police or the law, and the police offer her some sort of deal to give information about Min Hee-jin in exchange for lighter punishment, that would be very tempting to a shaman. So I could see how there could be many reasons why she's out of the picture, and how actually we really do need to find this shaman. Okay, shaman on the run. It's the APB alert. A shaman alert. If you see her, we don't even know what she looks like though. If you see her, please report her to 112. Actually, so 112 is like a non-emergency police line in Korea. And just in general, 119 is the emergency instead of 911 for, people in America. If you go to Korea, you have an emergency. 119 for like if you need an ambulance or police right away. 112 if you need to connect to the police. So there are people who report the shamans. Like in one documentary, there was one shaman who was fleeing because the media team that was doing the expose pretended that they were a customer and that they were going to hold this ceremony, and they had dialed 112 and reported her, and then they caught her in the parking lot fleeing with her stuff, stuffing it into her trunk, saying like, how could you do this to me? And they're like, how could you be like defrauding all of these people? Okay, so let's go into how this all looks and why somebody would go to a shaman like this, and how it kind of works in the scope of looking at it from, okay, there is somewhat of a rational reason, like to not judge people for going to the root of a shaman. Not all of them. Like if it's malicious, then of course let's judge, but So a lot of the times the people who go are in such a desperate situation, and it's affected their emotional outlook, and there's a lot of anxiety. They say anxiety is a feeling of panic about the future. Depression is more about what has happened, but I guess if you combine the two, but really you want to focus on changing the outcome of the future, and you feel no hope. What these shamans do is, what are they selling? Whether they're legitimate or not, but more so if they're like fraudsters, they're selling certainty, and they're selling hope, and really they're selling a change in your life that is gonna be guaranteed if you call upon the forces of whatever voodoo magic that they're trying to do with their witchcraft, and pay them anywhere between like $3,000 to like $15,000 a ceremony. Then they are saying that you are going to have a change in your life for the better and heal the curses of what's going on in your past, or you're kind of like tormented by spirits. I think that is their way of filtering customers, because number one, you're calling them, that's a huge filter, you're in a desperate situation. But number two, if you kind of swallow the bait of, your situation is in a bad place because of these spirits or this thing, like basically the metaphysical or non-physical world influencing, then that kind of shows that, okay, you can be swayed by, oh, your grandma's spirit is talking to me right now, and oh, she's apologizing for the curse she brought upon your family, and it'll be $10,000 to release it or something like that. And then if you pay that money, that also is like hook, line, and sinker. So apparently there's like also, they sell themselves on like the different prices based upon like what level of a shaman they are, and whether it's like a hereditary thing, like if their parents were a shaman, I guess that has more cred. But the big thing that creates the difference in price apparently is whether the shaman is so-called touched by the spirit or possessed, or if there's like some other spirit that lives in them. And apparently it's very clear that Min Hee-jin went to the primo because she, even through her Kakao Talk messaging part of the service, she was talking to the shaman as if the shaman was the spirit of her dead sister. So obviously she said like, yes, your dead sister has come into me, and this is how we're going to, like advise you from the other world. She probably said, oh, you have a good connection because your sister has an open spirit channel and she wanted me to come talk to you and all this kind of stuff. So apparently, though, that the way that they hook you in even more, the shamans hook their customers even more, is that they give them the hope, right? Oh, it's going to be solved. But then they make the situation worse. Like, oh my God, I didn't foresee this, or this like worse kind of like devil came in and we're going to have to do another ceremony and that's another $10,000 or something. And they try to make it so that the shaman is the only way that you have a psychological safety net or place. They're the only ones that can give you guidance. They're the only ones that can change your situation. They're the only ones that you can trust. So you become addicted to their certainty, their fulfillment of hope, and confidence. And so when people have been looking at this whole shaman situation from, let's say, a very non-spiritual practice or a non-believer's perspective, they're saying that actually that there is a situation they call samje, which basically means that bad things will happen to you no matter what. And so if bad things happen, then there's an excuse for the shaman to do more rituals. Or on the flip side, if you do actually get comfort from the shaman and then make decisions decisively, act consistently, your life most likely will get better just for the very nature of your different approach to life. And actually, beyond the creepy part, beyond the psycho part of this whole shaman thing where Min Hee-jin was chatting, in a way I felt like, geez, actually, I would love to have somebody who I can just text message at any time and just bounce my ideas off of. Have somebody give me encouragement. Have somebody just say that it's gonna work out decisively. Whether it works out or not, then it just gives you the oomph to go forward. So I kind of felt like she was paying a lot for that service, but there's other scenarios where people have their mastermind groups or people that they have an affinity with, and they work together, but I mean not on this close level. I think a message every minute or so. I forget how they said there's just tens of thousands of messages in the course of a few months. So I mean there's no mastermind group is going to do that. But I thought wow, that is actually a competitive advantage, because then she moves forward, very decisively, and she's thinking things through with somebody else. Granted, it's in a crazy loopy Looney Tunes type of situation, but I kind of see how maybe then she would attribute falsely too much of that over to the shaman. However, the shaman is doing the most, saying oh, don't worry. If there's any kind of when there were moments where she maybe Min Hee-jin was stuck from the Kakao Talk messages, we saw that the shaman's oh, don't worry about that. That's going to be part of your next package when I go dance around on knives and stuff, and then hoot and holler and create a better future for you. So there have been a lot of cases where fraudulent shamans in Korea are particularly using the whole social media platform to connect to new victims, and they get in trouble and they go to the big house. So I think even in the English expression, the big house means jail. And who knows where Min Hee-jin's shaman is. So if TV Daily isn't going to keep digging, maybe there can be Internet Daily or somebody else. Keep going. Track the shaman down or pressure the police. HYBE should now really pressure the police to issue a warrant for questioning of the shaman, because a lot of the information and the evidence that we've seen, so it might be more of like, this is the more salacious evidence that appeals to the public, so we see it more, and they probably have a lot more boring evidence that actually might be more powerful. But in any case, there is a lot of evidence about the shaman, so we do need to hear from the shaman. The shaman should be questioned because the shaman is part of this claim of breach of conduct and release of information that is like trade secrets to a third party that also influence the management of HYBE artists. We definitely do know that there was consultation there about even cutting members from New Jeans that was directed by the shaman's advice. And Korea has also been very they've been traumatized by this type of situation because it happens so frequently. And so it's kind of a situation of which way will public opinion win out, because there's so many people who do rely on this, so they kind of can't, if they're criticizing it, they're sort of criticizing themselves. But then on the other hand, they do not like to see, even if they might do it, they don't want to see other people get an advantage from it or use it to influence, like what we've seen, the government, even in the top office, even the current president and his wife, they had a problem with this in the beginning part of the administration. If you don't remember, there was a whole controversy. There were rumors that the president's wife wanted to move her shaman into the residential grounds of the presidential office, and they really had to do a no shamans residing here policy. So current president, definitely President Park, was accused of that. Too much. And so I think we need to have the lid blown off on this, because these are, if it's in the government, people who were not elected by the people doing things that the elected representative should do in terms of decision making. And then even in a private business, or this is a public business actually, because there are shareholders. These people who are running things through a shaman are putting the shareholders at risk, because the shareholders hired and they vote on who to hire, and they never hired a shaman. But the force of the shaman in terms of directing the outcome is so strong that it really needs to be looked at. And maybe we need to have a Min Hee-jin shaman law, anti-shaman law in Korea. I think it's definitely time for at least a debate in the National Assembly. How saucy would that be? And how many shamans in the closet would be exposed in terms of like the National Assembly members even using? That's the problem. It's so widespread but quiet, but then not quiet. Anyhow, what do you guys think? Put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.